Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis, and this is episode 135. And I have with me Brook Moser, who is a nonprofit leader in the world, and his nonprofit is called Intentional. We were laughing because before they've had a name change recently, and so we had to get it right. Thank you, man, for coming on.
Really,
that's
name
right. Hey,
drop.
Dude, man, and my listeners will understand this. I had a lady one time who Chip is my producer, and so he sends like the email to and the link and all that stuff, and she kept calling me Chip the entire interview.
Oh no!
And she was on.
Did she not catch it?
No, and I finally was like, "Hey," and so it was really funny. I was like, "Hey, my name is Clint. Like Chip is the producer," and she's like, "I'm so sorry," but it was hilarious. So
maybe she wanted to be talking. She'd rather talk to Chip. Maybe
she probably that would probably be smarter. He would give her a lot more information. Well, man, we're so glad to have you on. As we were talking about before, you're coming into kind of your own with this nonprofit. So tell us about it. Tell us what you're doing, and tell us who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Intentional is a nonprofit that's all about spiritual formation in the family. How do we become spiritually formed in the way of Jesus through the most close-knit relationships with parenting, with your spouse, in-laws, grandparents, nieces, nephews, community church, like all that together. And we create resources to help. So sometimes that's writing, podcasts, speaking, the different mediums that our day finds us in, film series, different things that churches can run to really help people learn and understand how to grow in the way of Jesus in a really practical way. And the caveat is in our cultural moment, because there's so much changing, as you know, Clint, better than anybody. Stuff's changing so fast. How do we keep up with all the topics of the moments, whether that's parenting in the digital age, or how do we continue to have open dialogue around topics like sex with our kids and all the different things that are coming their way. So that's the nonprofit. I'm married to Elizabeth, my wife. She actually leads this with me. She's an incredible human. She has her own gifts and skills and abilities to write and to speak. She's her own wonderful person. We've been married for almost 18 years. And then we have 4 kids, 1 boy, 3 girls. Duke, who is 15, just started driving, high school, the whole 9. That's happening. Ooh. Yeah, that's been fun. And then we have Scarlett, who's 12, Birdie, who is 9, or sorry, she's almost 9, and then Sloan, who's 6. So that's our world.
That's awesome, man. Well, I know as a dad of 2 boys, and we've been married 15 years this December, and yes, doing the counseling thing. I mean, it's fun, man. I mean, last night I had my littlest son and my oldest stayed at school, and I came and got him, and we went and did some errands, and there was a Tesla truck, and they right now, we used to play punch bug where you smack each other. Well, they're giving each other points for Teslas if they see them, or Tesla trucks. So
what do they call it?
They call it like a cyber truck or whatever, but they'll just yell out Tesla. My oldest will be in the middle of a conversation like Tesla, but if they see the cyber truck, they win. So, and then they get 10 points for the next game. So anyway, we saw one, and then the guy that I knew him actually once we got in the store, and so he let him sit in it and like look at it, and it was awesome. Oh,
dude, I would call that a cyber punch. Just a cyber punch, like immediately. Just
that's good. I'm gonna steal.
They can take it. Yeah, please give it to them. They can have it.
Well, dude, I'm super excited to have you on. Like I told you right before we started, we've been following John Mark Comer and the stuff he's doing in your family, and had read your in-laws book, and man, just wanted to get some wisdom for you for parents. My listeners are from all over the world, and lots of people they're like us. They're becoming new parents, or they have teenagers, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate time and anxiety and fears and their own trauma. And so kind of what's your story leading into the nonprofit? What led you into this? How have you found some healing, and then how are you kind of actively working through that as a leader and as a dad?
Oh man, thank you for saying working through that, because we are all in process. None of us arrived. So I'm deep in process with all your listeners. Yeah, man. I mean, the story goes for me. I grew up in a nominal Christian home, a lot of name of Christian, you go to church, you do the religious practices, but really deep dysfunction at a deep level. I have an older brother, a younger sister, mom and dad, and without getting into details, because it's not my story to share fully, just a ton of emotional dynamics that were super unhealthy, and a lot of trauma based from that. A lot of different things happened as I grew up. And so I kind of came into adulthood with a limp, a very big one, and didn't fully know it. That was the best part, is that I thought I was completely functionally fine. And so I did what any really wounded man does, and I became a pastor. So I was like, that's what they need to do. So I found my way into ministry, which was bizarre. And I was young too. So didn't know the trauma, didn't know how it was affecting me, didn't know how I was moving through the world. And I decided to help other people hopefully follow Jesus in a consistent way. And it was just exactly like it sounds. It was both beautiful and messy, and Jesus is really gracious and redeeming. And then at the very same time, man, it was challenging when I started to wake up. I'd call it waking up in my late 20s to realize like I can't really function in my most crucial relationships in a healthy way. And so I never, ever, my wife and I never, and we say this to this day, we never expected or journeyed out to do what we're doing today. And that's not everyone's story, but that truly is ours. We were in a space of being on our way to church plant. We had started a handful of churches with my father-in-law, mother-in-law, Phil and Diane Comer. And then when you were saying, Comer, John Mark Comer, that's my wife's brother. We had all planted, John Mark, myself, and then the Comers planted about 2 churches, almost 3 churches together. Mm-hmm. And then Elizabeth and I were about to go plant one of our own. And during that time, we had our 3rd little girl, Birdie James, and she got really sick just one day, 6 months old, started having these really weird movements, and turned out she had a form of catastrophic epilepsy, which is called infantile spasms. And so that's basically every time she would have a seizure, it's like a bomb going off in her brain, and it causes long-term permanent brain damage. Cool. So all of a sudden, we go from a normal, healthy 3rd child who is 6 months old to a very sick, now in certain ways definitely has lost certain parts of her brain and ability, and has become a child with special needs. On top of that, we, as she was getting better, decided to have a 4th little one because we didn't want our youngest one to necessarily grow up without a sibling, because she was about 4 years away from the next sibling. So we're like, if she has special needs and she's the youngest, I mean, she could get lost in the mix so quick. And so we actually felt, and this is our story, not everybody's, but we just felt like from the Spirit through prayer, like it's actually something for her that we need to actually think about it. So we did, and got pregnant right away, had another girl, which I think is again a grace for her. So Birdie and Sloan are inseparable. So then all of a sudden we have 4 kids, 1 with special needs, all little, and we're supposed to go plant a church. And the 2 cities that we were looking at actively and most consistently were Seattle or New York. And we were like, there's just no way in the world this is going to work. It's not going to happen. And so we quickly just sat down and said, I'm in ministry. I've been a pastor for, at that time, like 15 years. Jesus, what do you want us to do? What are we supposed to do? And we just sat there for a while, and Phil and Diane Comer had started Intentional, and it was just simply a conference, and they had written a book, the one you're mentioning, and they would just go around and speak. And so I'll kind of separate the journey of my own person really quick and just talk about maybe a little bit of the career of how I landed here. Sure. And then I'll mention the inner journey. But how we ended up here is they invited us into that. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I do not want to do anything. Well, first of all, I don't want to work with family again. We already did that for a long time. And we can do it. Like, we've done it, but it's not for the faint of heart. Like, those family run businesses, they're both beautiful, and it takes a whole extra grace to actually do that, which I do think we all have. But nonetheless, you got to really make sure when you're about to jump into it, like, do we have the grace to do that again? So there was that piece. And then it wasn't really on our heart to help in that way. We're like, we're going to be helping through local church ministry. And so once we slowed down enough, opened our hearts enough, and prayed, we like slowly tiptoed into the waters of Intentional, and just quickly our heart began to break. And we began to see God was giving us an opportunity to not waste the pain that we've experienced as a family personally, through health journey, through my own struggles of life and being an adult male in this moment with not a lot of tools coming into adulthood. My wife has a lot of chronic illness, so that plays into our everyday life is both complex and messy. All that said, we found ourselves with a heart breaking for families and saying, God, if you want us to serve this group of people, then we're happy to do it. And so that's how we landed here. But along the way, the inner journey of beginning to discover what you have, what was given to you, what wasn't, what was trauma, what wasn't, how do you even deal with the things that you're now presented with and seeing? That's been a long journey for me. I've been on that road for probably almost 10, 11 years now. And so I'm really grateful for folks like yourself, therapists who are helping others, who are creating resources, creating spaces to have safe conversation. But that journey has been one that I've said to myself and to God, like, if you want to use this to help other people, I'm willing. And that's really, I mean, it sounds, I could give you a more glamorous angle, but that's just truly the brass tacks of it, man.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's where we're at.
That's very similar. I mean, I, grew up, my parents divorced when I was 8 and had some sexual trauma, and then moved into high school and did all the things that you're talking about with really no guide. And my mom worked for the Baptist convention, and, so went to church and saw my grandparents be deacons. But yeah, that stuff, there's a lot of brokenness, and, became a therapist because I wanted to help people. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, hey, you want to get your life together, go be a pastor and a therapist, and help other people. And man, in the last 5 years, the amount of humility from being a dad, and we have some kids with special needs stuff too, and really bad food allergies and sensory stuff. And, that the first couple of years, my oldest almost died twice. And then we had leukemia, and we got,
oh my
God, did a crazy healing on that. And, so same thing. I'm trying to, sit with people in their pain and figure out, like, how do I be a dad and a man and a pastor and a minister and all this stuff. And humility was really the biggest thing for me, was running to the end of myself. And so the question I'd ask you, what I had to do was, there's a space where I had to kind of sit in my victimhood, like sit in the space of like, oh man, I didn't get these things. But then really the transition was recognizing as a dad, man, I do have access to therapy. I have all these resources, and I'm still messing up. Have you found this place where you were able to honor kind of the pain that you went through? And then how did you kind of let go and forgive and move forward? Where are you at with that? Has that helped? It seems like you wouldn't be in the spot if you hadn't, but.
Yeah. That's a very thoughtful question. No, I think I would answer yes. The explanation, yes, I've been in that process, been doing that work, and it's really hard. I think one of the most important things to remember, and one of the biggest gifts someone gave me that I would love to give everybody listening, or I would hope to give anybody that I ever get to communicate with, whether that be through a screen or through an ongoing conversation or just in-person conversation, is that real change takes a very long time. And so the stuff that my natural reactions in a moment of stress, my over intensities, my natural responses, my knee-jerk reactions as a parent or a spouse, that have been woven into my body in many ways through years and years and years of doing it the wrong way, take a lot of years to undo and change. And so I would say, yes, I'm on that journey, but it's a journey. Just last night, our little girl, Birdie, she's one with special needs, she gets very stuck on ideas. And if she has something in her head right before she goes to bed, and she doesn't it's an OCD thing, but essentially if she doesn't have a moment to do the thing that she's been fixated on, whether that's I just want to see this picture, or I just want to look at this book, or I just wanted to look this thing up and see how much the price was on Amazon, or whatever the thing is. And that's what it was last night. If she doesn't have a chance to do that, she can vocalize, I'm just scared of my brain getting stuck. She's scared of her own brain. Well, that's my heart should be, Clint, it should be compassion, and it should be absolutely, sweetie, let me get on one knee and hold you in anything you need. And let's just look at that really quick, and then we can ease in bed. But this was at the end of a very long day. And this was the fourth fixation that she had. And I was really, really at the point where I was okay, there's just a line where you're going to have to listen. And I know you don't want to, but bed's an inevitable thing. We can't keep avoiding this. It's happening, And even last night, man, just short and rude and direct and over direct with her. And her response is always I would say it's the both encourager and the discipline. It is for lack of a better word, punishment, but it's the thing that breaks my heart. Is she just quietly and softly implodes. She just tears up, and she just says, please don't talk to me that way. And I'm and she's absolutely right. And in those moments, I would say I'm still learning. I wish I could have everything all the time to say, I know what the right response is. I know I could tell you word for word what to do. I could even show you what to do. But to actually be able to live that out in a day-to-day way takes a very long time. And I think anybody that is on the road and you have 4 or 5 nights like that as an example, where it's bedtime's chill or they're freaking out and they're going nuts and you're just like really chill and really calm. For every 4 or 5 nights, you may have 3 that are just terrible and they're the old versions of yourself. And if I could just give some hope and perspective, I think that's more normal than we normalize it to be. And I don't think that's always perfect, but I do think that you're getting better.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I always tell parents, I don't expect anybody to be perfect. Adam and Eve had perfect parents, and they made that mistake, right? Because the other side of trauma is like me and you wanting to be these dads who never mess up because we're trying to give our kids a better life. And I had to get to this place where I was like, okay, I just want to do the right thing 8 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
7 out of 10 is it's an A, but I want an A plus. So 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. But I've never in all of my counseling, man, had anybody, and this is something I think parents worry about all the time. I've never had anybody come into therapy and say, you know what, my dad lost his temper with me, or he was impatient with me, or even he spanked me one time out of anger. And then he sat me down and he apologized to me. And he said he was sorry and he took responsibility. And I need to talk to you about that. Right? Like,
you're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, talk to me about like teaching people how to repair those ruptures and why that's so important as an intentional parent or a intentional spouse,
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything you just said. Well, I mean, to the point, my first job was to apologize to Birdie. And then it was to apologize to my wife, who was definitely knew where I was at the end of a long day. And was trying to talk me off a ledge. And I was like, well, if you would like me to be off the ledge, then why don't you help? Like, you could help so I don't have to be on the ledge. You know what I mean? And that's real. That's the truth. Like, and she didn't step in and I felt frustrated, so I had to apologize to everybody. I was just apologizing to everyone last night, which is the thing I do the most. But what I think one of the things that I think that framework that's helpful for me and hopefully maybe helpful for others is what we're trying to do when it comes to rupture and repair, or the idea of forgiveness, like you're talking about, which is beautiful and it's healing, is we want to create an ecosystem of forgiveness in our home, that the very reaction of a bad moment or a breakdown or a bad attitude or a misspoken word is to repair it. It's just in our home, the culture is you don't just leave things unsaid or undone, you make it right. And sometimes that happens quickly and oftentimes it doesn't. And so that is the goal, I think, for us. I have this weird thing that maybe you have this too. It sounds like maybe you do, but I don't actually know what it's like to be parented by a parent like myself. Meaning I am parenting so differently. I don't know what it's like as a child to experience this kind of parenting. And that's a very interesting place to be, because I can tell you, like, I know it's really important to apologize to your kids. And I can see in real time how it softens and heals. But I don't know like how helpful. So is it like 10% helpful? Is it like 80% helpful?
So
you know
true.
what I mean? And so it's hard to watch that because I'm like, is this just rote stuff? Like, so that's the truth of it, is there's a lot of times I feel like, is this just a rote practice? But if I can just give at least, sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. That's the truth as well. But if there's anything that we've been able to see is we've just attempted, and I'd say that's the attempt, to create an ecosystem of forgiveness, where we give and receive forgiveness in a normal way, because that's exactly how Jesus does that with us. We see so much more peace, so much more connectedness, so much more relational intimacy with our whole family being able to be close. And the truth, and for me personally, I apologize most of the time. That's the thing I do the most. It's the thing that at the end of the day, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. That was wrong. Will you please forgive me? I mean, like, or I was too intense, or when I didn't like the tone that I used, will you forgive me? I mean, this is an everyday occurrence. But I think as we do that, what happens is we create this space of peace and grace, not perfection, but there's a lot of peace in our home because of that. There's also like no passive people in my home. I did not marry a passive woman. None of our kids are passive. Yeah. Which is like, yes, it's beautiful. It's like, it's exactly what I want. And
too, right?
Yeah. It's like exactly what I want and exactly what I'm like. Sometimes it'd be nice if you were just like, just went with the flow. Yeah. It's like, go with the flow, like, what do you think about not having an opinion about that? It doesn't work. I hope, yes. Elizabeth, please don't listen to this.
We would be bored, right?
Totally. And that's not actually what we want. But at the same time, like none of our kids are passive. So this is not coming from a person who has kids that are just honestly pretty down the middle, don't have any unique needs. They're pretty passive. They're actually really willing to please. I do not have one kid that is like, they're eager to please. They're like eager to push back and eager to be like, how does that actually work? And why would you say it that way? And I don't think that's how it should be. And what about this? Have you thought about this scripture? And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like everyone. So we have peace, we have intensity, we have both at the same time. And we're attempting to create an ecosystem, but I believe it brings such beauty and such peace and such blessing to our home.
That's great, man. Yeah, it's like these weird things where with my oldest, I heard this quote the other day that I really loved, and it was, your kids can't learn to regulate emotions that you don't allow them to have.
Oh,
and I was like, ooh, that'll eat your lunch. So my oldest is like looking at me, and I'd already told him to go to bed, and he's like, I'm doing this, and I was like, I said go to bed. And he like looks at me, and I'm like, now I didn't, and he goes in the room, and my wife like looks at me, and she's like, is that how you normally act? And I like kind of am, and I'm like, with a question mark, and I'm like, well, look, sometimes he just needs to listen to what I'm saying. Like I'm always, 9 out of 10 times I'm listening to him, I'm talking, but sometimes I need him to go to bed. And she's like, yeah, but how you said that? And I'm like, okay, got it. So I walk in the bedroom with him, he's just sitting in the bed, and I'm like, hey buddy, listen, I do want to hear what you have to say. I want to process things with you. And I should have said that right then. I should have said, listen, I do normally care about what you think. I care about what you think right now, but right now I need you to be obedient. And instead I just forced you to be obedient, which then hurt your feelings and sit you in. So that's not how I want to do it, but it's like, man, yeah, if he's never been 9 before, and I think parents need to remember that we have bad days, that we're exhausted, that we're tired, that we just don't want to deal with it anymore. And neither do they. They don't want to deal with us. They don't want to deal with the rules and so many times
at a certain point they don't. You're right.
Yeah. And I just have to kind of laugh and go, I do want that structure. I mean, I'm a big person that's, I tell my wife this all the time, to hate on her a little bit. I'm like, you've asked him to do that 3 times. If you've asked him to do it once and you didn't say this is going to happen after you asked him to do it, then he's going to just keep rolling the dice on if he's going to get away with it. So we have our strengths and our weaknesses, right? It's like, we have to help each other. How do you look forward to with a nonprofit and families? How do you what's y'all's goal with teaching parents those kind of things? What are the ways that you plan on kind of equipping those things? And is it a balance of teaching the parent to be insightful about their own stuff? And, or is it like teaching them skills and resources, or both?
Man, well, so I would love to answer these questions in reverse, which is unfair because as a person in the podcast space, I have a tendency to just go wherever. So I apologize.
No, it's great, man.
No, but you said something about not being able to process the emotions that they didn't even know they had. Is that how you said it?
Yeah, no, the quote I think is, I wrote it the other day. So it was like, kids can't regulate emotions that they're not allowed to have.
Yes. So, just a quick on that. I think I just want to put a pin in that because what you just said is really important. And maybe just to even say, I will never forget, this happened just a few years ago when one of my little ones was freaking out about something so minute. I mean, it was so silly, but it was just like full rage, screaming like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, and you're just like, what is going on? And then all these things come up in me, which I think is the truth of parenting, is that so much of parenting brings up wounds and things that you never got, things that you never dealt with, things that you've never even been aware of. And that's going to lead to the answer to at least the response to your question in a second. But I will never forget watching this little one just absolutely lose it. And I had all those thoughts that you have, that everyone has. Like, I would have never been allowed to do that, to scream like that and do that. And I was angry, at least I thought. And then I thought for a second, and I just paused. And I'll never forget the moment that I feel like it was just a gift from the Holy Spirit, where he just literally said, "You're not angry, you're grieving." I was like, what? I'm just sitting there in the moment, like all this is happening so fast. I'm like, what? And it was the reality that I was never safe enough to respond this way.
Yep.
I never had a space where I could fully express myself, whether that be positive or a negative, and it be an okay thing. And it was a really weird, like, catch 22 or full 180 of like, I thought I was just mad, but really what was coming out was grief that I never had it. And I think that's a really important lesson or story to lead into our ministry. Primarily, our focus is not to teach your kids how to be the best types of kids, although we do all want good humans. It's really to help the heart of the parent, because what happens a lot of the times, and of course we have our own things that we're learning about with our kids and we want to pass those on, but you and your own personal journey with Jesus, you and your own understanding of how you move through the world, it will be the thing in many ways that either makes or breaks your parenting. So you have no chance of being a good parent if you do not take time to understand why you are the way you are, why you're responding the way you are. You will literally be fighting against yourself at every step of the way. And so one of the things that we really want to do is help equip parents, specifically moms, dads, motherhood, fatherhood, to be able to understand what that journey is, how to go on it, what to expect, what is realistic, what's, like you said, when your dad's in the space of wanting to help people, you have this unrealistic expectation on yourself sometimes. What's a realistic expectation? And then from that place, from that foundation, we move into, well, how do we talk to our kids, and how do we love them, and how do we teach them the way of Jesus, and how do we bring God into all the different moments, and how do we bring him into the moments of pain and frustration and sadness, the disciplinary things of the world. It all leads to that. But I think it really starts with the parent. I think it starts with the mom that never got what she needed from her mom and is over responding or under responding to her kids at a daily, and perpetuating generational trauma unintentionally.
Yeah.
We want people to wake up and begin to actually take responsibility for what's going on, not in a shameful way, but like, it's yours now. You have the freedom to make that choice, and healing can come. Just like pain and destruction can come through your life and body, so can healing.
So good, man.
Yeah.
Tell me about, the way you help men, especially. What's been your experience as a pastor, as a dad, with maybe the busyness of life? I think we live in a world now where, I know you're probably the same way, like you're out with your kids and somebody's like, oh, you're babysitting your kids today, or you're keeping your kids, you're like, no, I'm freaking parenting. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I do. So we've had this, it's like this weird culture of like, or the other side of it, which is, you go in and do the dishes and then you come out like a superhero because you did one thing and your wife's done like 400. So there's these like, this world we live in now at our age where, and if you do anything, if you're just nice to your kid in public, people treat you like a superhero. How do you teach regular dads to be present, to kind of, I know it's through healing, but how do you see that playing out with your nonprofit and with ministry that you're doing? And what are maybe some of the things that your peers are really struggling with today?
It's really interesting. Yeah. I would wonder if, depending upon where you're at in different cultures and even just different parts of the US, like,
sure.
Because, I know that experience that you're talking about where it's like, you do one thing and you're praised, and the mother-in-law and your mom are like, oh my gosh, my husband never did any of it, just like,
right.
They weren't present at all, like, so you have that extreme. What I experience more often, Clint, to be honest, is I experience dads that there's pendulum has swung a little bit too far. So the pendulum was, I do one thing, I get praised. That's really good. Awesome. The other pendulum is dads that are now like either stay-at-home dads or in many ways having the full-time job and also expected to share the load 50-50. And that's, again, there's nothing wrong with whatever dynamic you want to set up in your own home. I would just say on any of those angles, the goal isn't to sit there and check off a list of how much did he do versus how much did she do. It's, are you parenting together? Are you coming into a situation with your strengths fully available, fully present, and offering them to your kids, to your marriage, to all of it? Because the truth is, for us, Elizabeth and I, we have different skills and different strengths. And so does that always equate to just down the middle, I'm doing 50, she's doing 50? Not at all. Like, not even close. And she's also better at a lot of things than I am. And so she leans into her strengths. But at the very same time, it's my job to also lean into my own, and for us to get together, to do the hard work, really, of getting together and going, what do you need? And that changes season to season, by the way, that it changes what we all need. And then for me to come alongside her and care for her as she needs, and for her to care for me as I need. And so the biblical definition of love is my favorite, is to will the good of the other. So when we sit down, it's my job to go, not am I checking off who's doing the dishes or laundry? How can I will your good? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like laundry comes up or dishes come up, we're like, hey, could you make the bed every morning? Sure. Like that's the new kick. Like she's like, that would just really help. Like, great. I make the bed every morning now. That was just a simple way to will her good. Is it more on my to-do list or my checkoff? A little bit, right? But it's not about the list, it's about the love. And I think that as long as we can focus on that, whether you are a dad that's doing nothing or a dad that's overdoing it, that's really the goal, is to lean into your strengths. And then seasons change. Sometimes you are a stay-at-home dad and your wife is the breadwinner, or vice versa. And honestly, your loads are going to need to change based on that. But the real thing as far as dads go is, man, just be involved, be present. Do not let your ego destroy your family, man. Do not let your ego destroy your family. You will regret it. Every single man that has written about it and talked to it, you all know the story. Every guy regrets when they get to a certain age and they haven't given their family and their wife and their kids their attention. They all regret it. It's 100% sure every time. So slow down now as much as you can. Be present to those in your life, and recognize that all the things you're hoping, even career-wise, this is something that we talk about often. It's not no, it's just not yet. In this stage
Mm-hmm.
of life, there's just a lot of not yets. There's a lot of things I can't even just do right now. You're in the same boat. Like, you have vision beyond your own capacity right now. That's both a gift and a curse. Like, you could see where you could help even more people, Clint, in all these different ways. And yet there's a grace, I think, in being grounded. There's a gift in our limitations.
Yeah, man, I love that. Not no, but not yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge. I mean, it's so hard as a parent too, because you can know all, information isn't transformation, and so you can know all the. I can be a therapist. We can know all the things. You can read all the books and podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, you're in the moment, which takes us back to like the theology of this idea. And really, what I love that y'all are doing is getting people back to disciplines and principles of living. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. What I'd love to hear you talk about a little bit is calling back to kind of, I think we have this worldview, most people have this worldview of like throwing everything out with the bathwater, with the baby out with the bathwater, about everything that's been done,
Yeah.
whether it's marriage or parenting or men and women. And man, it's sad, but like so much of our time and my work with people is getting them to go back to some of the
Mm-hmm.
things from the past that worked, sitting down at the table and eating dinner, not having devices together. What seemed like very simple. They drink water. You know what I mean? It's like when people come into me, I'm like, have
Care
you
for
gotten
yourself.
sleep?
Yeah.
Are you drinking water? Have you
Yeah.
exercised? And have you met with anybody relationally at all? And usually the answer
Mm.
is no to all of those. And then we're like, well, let's not talk about medication yet. Right.
Mm.
So what are some things that maybe you guys are trying to do to help people to get back to
Mm.
some of the principles of historical Christianity, of disciplines
Mm.
that I think the
Mm.
postmodernist parents and individual parents have kind of thrown out?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there.
Sure.
I would first say,
Pick your
I think,
poison.
yeah, no, I would first say that what you have to deal with now is parents that didn't do their job 15, 20 years ago. We're seeing just the fruit of folks that either couldn't give something or didn't give something to their kids. Simple things, like we're talking, like you're saying, has anyone told you that when you don't sleep and don't drink enough water and don't care for your body, you become really moody and emotional and maybe off and aren't your best version of yourself? Some people truly are like, no, I didn't fully know that.
Right.
So I think there is that understanding that that is one of the things we are wanting to do even right now. We want to be on the preventative side of saying, how can we help raise thoughtful, loving, Jesus-centered humans that are thriving and flourishing,
Right.
and give them the tools in the moment that they exist in. We're all on the same planet during these 80 or so years. How we have different problems right now than they did 80 years ago, and different
Sure.
problems than what's going on in the future. We have a particular set of problems right now. How do we help those in this moment right now with the problems at hand? And how do we help them so they know how to equip their kids to do that? That's really the overall heart of it. So I would first say, yeah, there's been an underparenting. And then when people throw those ideas out, I think they do so dismissively. And this is all the stuff that everyone every conversation I'm having right now with any leader or anyone in this space, it is the same thing of how technology in all of its crazy forms is shaping us, forming us to the negative and destroying parts of our worlds and brains. Now, I think I'm more hopeful than most people. There's a lot of catastrophic thinking around this. I'm really hopeful for lots of reasons. And I also think that when you're completely in despair about something, you're really not equating God. Like, God's not a God that is out of control, or like you need to bring him into the story. That said, everyone's talking about technology. And I think because of that, one of the things that we see most in our age and stage and even our group of friends is people just dismiss the church first. They go, you know what? We're out on the church. Like, either I was hurt, either this happened. No, I'll be caveat. People have been hurt by stupid people. There's been more moral failure that we know about now than ever before. And I mean, maybe there was more, but we know about it now. People are seeing a lack of credibility in the church and those leading the churches. They're sickened by the hypocrisy. I get all of that. And I don't discount anybody that has really, truly experienced pain from those in a church setting. But you've also experienced pain from high school people, and you've experienced pain from your job. And what is so different about church that you just exclude it from your life because you had a moment of pain,
you're never going to work
discomfort?
Again.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's just, it breaks down so quickly, and church for so many is optional, where I would say that's one of the things that if I can encourage people, is find a church that loves Jesus, teaches the scriptures regularly, is not too impressed with itself, and is willing to serve the community and gives you an opportunity to serve. Church is more about what you can give than what you can get. And when you go to church, if your posture is, what can I get? Well, you've already used and abused church in the way that it was never designed for. It was actually designed for you to come and exercise your gifts for the best and betterment of the community and the people that you're involved with. So it's you to say, okay, I have a gift of A, B, or C, and my job is to go to church, and it is to help others with my gifts. That's the primary thing. And in so doing, we're fed and we're encouraged and we're blessed, and the scriptures are spoken, and there's Eucharist and there's all that stuff. As we, as we try to help people, I think what we're trying to do, even with intentional, is to help people see that slowing down, opening the scriptures, centering yourself on something that's not you, has worked up to this point and will continue to work far beyond this point. Yeah. And the only reason we're questioning it is because there's a new thing of technology here going, like, look at all this stuff is great. Yes, there's beauty, there's greatness, but until we can fit it back into the way that we were truly, and this is a lack of a better word, the way we were truly designed to operate, those silly analogies that pastors have used all for too many years, but we are just truly most of us using the wrong operating system for how we're designed. And so until we can get to a spot where we go, oh, I'm actually meant to be a human and to slow. I'm meant to live for something that is beyond and bigger than me. I am meant to give, not take. And in so doing all the things my soul desires most, that's how it's fulfilled. So we're trying to do that in all sorts of ways. Not enough time here to go at length, but to give people a vision that if you can live to that design, man, there's a lot of beauty for you and for those around you.
That's awesome, man. What I know we got 5 minutes left, but what do you think are some of the ways that you right now currently are kind of, what are some of the questions you're asking for the season you're in with time? Like, what are you wrestling with, and like maybe what are some of the quick solutions that you're coming up with that are working for your family?
You mean in the time that we're living in?
Yeah, well, just like right now, you got little kids, you got a teenager, you're in the midst of doing this podcast with me. Like, time is the thing that is an equalizer, right? Like, everybody's like, if I have more time, what are some ways that you've found just as a dad and a leader and a speaker and, all those things? What are just something that you find right now, just this week, maybe this month, that is like, man, that really is jamming for me. I need that. I can't do without that. And it makes everything else kind of slow down.
Yes. Thank you for the clarification. I mean, it's really just simple, and it's nothing fancy, and it's what you've heard 1,000 times. I think for you to have a moment to sit with yourself and God in silence, to let whatever's under the surface work its way to the top. Sometimes it comes really fast and you feel a bunch of things, and sometimes it doesn't. But if you can't get alone and get quiet and have some pensive thoughts with God each day, you come unwound really fast. I mean, I do, and I think most people do. They just don't even understand how centering that is. And I think the truth of it all, and I think the most important thing to say is, the things that ground me the most are the things that I choose. They're not easy. They don't even come naturally. They're the things I choose to put in my day because there's so much fruit from them. So that's for me, waking up early. It will often look like a scripture or a book I'm reading, a journal, and prayer. Thoughtfulness around what kind of human that Jesus is asking me to be, what kind of father he's asking me to be, praying into the reality that I need help in everyday moments, right? But also with being a husband and with being a dad, like the most, I need help with that, so asking just for practical things. I build that in because it literally changes the trajectory of my life, my day, how I think of myself, reminding myself who I am, where I'm at on the totem pole of life, which is real low. And I need to remember that. And I need to stay present to the fact that God is doing stuff beyond me, through me, in spite of me, all that stuff. And then the second one is when my kids are down at night, and I mean, sometimes this takes hours, Clint, sometimes they settle easy, and sometimes it's like, okay, it's been 2 hours since we put you in bed. What do you need now?
Why are you back in my room for the night?
What's going on? Oh, you want to talk about that? You're emotionally wanting to process your day with me now. Interesting. So, after that, after the house is quiet, I will often just slip outside for just a few minutes. Sometimes it's long, depending upon what I'm going on, but I'll just simply go on a walk, and I'll just reflect on my day. And there's something beautiful. We live in Bend, Oregon, and there's a lot of beauty here. It's high desert, so it gets cool at night. And it's quiet, and the sky's big, and there's a lot of stars. And it's just stepping out, and it's a practice. I don't always want to. Most of the time, I just want to binge Netflix. To be honest, I want to eat food, and I want to binge Netflix. Sometimes I do. But oftentimes, I just slip out, and I just pray, and I reflect on the day. I ask God to come into the next day. And truly, I know that that's overdone, overwrote. People do that all the time. But they do it all the time because it's so powerful. They do it all the time because it's so effective. It's life-changing. So try it.
That's good, man. Same here, dude. Like, I have a little garage gym, and then, I would say four out of the 7 nights, if I'm in a good routine, maybe 5, I go for a walk. Same thing. And get the kids down. They're definitely asleep, And my wife, I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to put this up. I'm going to do whatever. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go for 20 minutes, and just walk the neighborhood, look at the stars. I love the moon. Like, I have a little moon on my keychain.
Yeah.
We took the kids to a museum this weekend, and it was like stars. And for me, it's just like giving myself that humility of putting myself in perspective of everything else and everybody else. And everybody's got stuff going on. Everybody's going to sleep. The moon is in the sky. God is sovereign. Kind of going through that Lord's Prayer order of, God is my Father. He's in heaven. His name is good. And just kind of doing that, man. That's been really good. We recently moved to more of a liturgical church in the last year and a half. Yeah. So we do communion every week, and Lord's Prayer, Nicene Creed, and it's smaller. And man, those rhythms have been so good for my wife and me. And so I've been the same way with you, like just encouraging people that the simple things like drinking water and getting sleep, the things that Christians have done for thousands of years, reading scripture in the morning, bathing ourselves in scripture, meditating on the word, those things seem so, they seem like they have no power. It's like, why? Like, people are like, give me something else, right? You guys are doing this podcast. Like, give me the big thing. It's like, it's not big things. It's doing the small things consistently daily. Over time. That just, man, you look up and you're like, I am a different human being than I was 6 months ago, than I was 2 years ago. That Paul talks about being transformed by the renewing of our mind back to that truth. And it's like neuro pathways can change, habits can change. Sure, you're going to slip up, but man, it's up and to the right. It's like it's just that sanctification journey. So, man, I just truly am blessed by this conversation and encouraged as a dad, as a husband. If nobody else listens to it, man, it's just edifying to me to remember the things we're talking about is what the whole point of intentional is to normalize and give people information so they don't feel uniquely broken and cast out. And like, man, the only reason all this is going this way is just because of our little unit jacked up. It's like, no, we're all in this on some spectrum.
Yeah, and maybe just to say, there's a lot of noise out there, even in the Christian world. There's a lot of noise of folks that are telling you, maybe even younger folks who are telling you that there maybe is a quickness, or if you just follow this prescriptive way, honestly, things will be all right.
Program,
And
baby.
and I just call I just say no to that. There's a lot of people that have a platform that are simply just really good at marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff that they say has a version of helpfulness, but at the core is not always rooted in biblical, long, beautiful, humble fruit. And I think it's the reminder that those who you most want to be like became like that over a very long, slow period. And anybody that's microwaving beautiful ideas and selling them to you and giving you the idea that if you just need to do these few things, that will happen for you. But just beware, because
Good,
the
man.
real way to Jesus is actually a long, slow, humble, humiliating, painful often process that doesn't come quick and is usually only experienced in its fullest the older you get. And so just to encourage you, if you feel discouraged today, like, gosh, I see all these people around me and they're just like, I was open social media and everyone's like so rad and they're all following Jesus. Like, yes. And they know how to market them. Like, people know how to do this
It's
stuff.
so good, man.
And so I just remember the real fruit always lasts. It always lasts and it never comes fast. So if you're trying to microwave your sanctification, just like slow down and recognize that that's not how Jesus works. You're serving a false God, or at least a God that is not the God of the scriptures. So be encouraged. It takes a long time.
Yeah, man.
I don't know
Dude,
if that's encouraging.
no, it's super discouraging to me because like we talked about before, I think, I'm just trying to do the next right thing and this podcast and have people on and have good conversations. And, I do sometimes with books and writing and, you just see these things and you're like, dang, and I'm like, but I don't want what that brings you. I care about our community and our church and our people. I do care about the rest of the world, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Of course.
But only if that
that wasn't a slam,
it.
by the way.
No. I'm saying it is a slam, though. I think what people need to recognize is that that it's so easy to get caught up on measuring yourself against somebody else, and thinking, oh well, all of these people are getting the quick fix, and it's like you're right, man. It's just not true. It took so many years for people. Most people who have a successful book, it's like their fifth book. Like most people who have a podcast, it's like their fifth season of the podcast.
Sure.
It's the reality, but it's so easy as parents to want to listen to a podcast and go, okay, my kid's not sleeping, my kid's having this struggle. Just tell me what to do so that goes away.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll end with is that I realized in the last couple of years that I thought Jesus was the Prince of Comfort, not the Prince of Peace. And I've had to realize, like, in my own life, man, I was seeking him for comfort and thinking, okay, if I do the right things and I plan and I strategically am therapeutic and available and I don't do all the things that I've seen done and I read about, that it'll be very comfortable and everything will go right. And in the last 5 years, right, in my own work and with people, I've just come to have that humility of like, oh, no, Jesus was in the garden sweating blood and stressed out, but he was at peace because he knew his Father loved him. And he was sovereign and good. And man, how do you know that? By being in his presence through prayer and taking a walk when your crazy kids go to sleep and doing the simple things that Jesus did. So, man, I'm just super encouraged by you, man.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. And that's that last statement was very, very convicting, but also a great reminder is that most of the time when we are really walking with Jesus, I mean, there's peace in a sense, but it's usually very hard, and most of life is mixture. It's really beautiful and really hard all at the same time. And the more mature I think you grow in Jesus, or even the inner journey, it is both all at the same time. I could tell you 5 things that I'm like elated about today, and I could also tell you 5 things that devastate me, concern me, worry me, and overwhelm me right now today. And so it's equal, man. It's mixture, and I'm grateful that God has given us the reality of the kingdom of heaven, that it's not just being taken off of this earth out of the trouble. We get to partner with the kingdom work now.
Yeah, man.
And that there's so much more going on that we can't even fully understand. Like, God lets us involve ourselves in another realm, which is his kingdom. And we access that through prayer primarily, but man, there's so much beauty that you can tap into even in the pain. So onward with the journey, huh?
Yeah, man. Well, thank you guys for listening. Check out what they're doing at Intentional if you need resources. I'm going to link them all in the description. Thank you so much for your time, man, and I appreciate it. God bless you guys. Thanks for listening.